Hey guys, what's happening? So we are back for more Immortal Thor, because we need to pick up from this cliffhanger that's been hanging for a couple months now, and get into what happened to Thor when he was turned to stone by Grey Gargoyle and broken into pieces. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, this picks up from what we saw in Immortal Thor issue 16, when Thor was lured into a trap orchestrated by Dario Agger, which was mainly set up to prevent Thor from mending his reputation on Earth, but as a bonus he was lured into a fight with the radioactive man that very quickly became an ambush, where he was turned to stone by the Great Gargoyle, and then shattered into pieces by Mr. Hyde. And so here's the thing, because it's not over for Thor just yet, but it soon will be if this doesn't get fixed. Because the Grey Gargoyle's rock transmutation effect, it's only gonna last for so long, because the spell usually lasts for an hour. But because of Thor's new belt, Yogurt, that hour's been cut down to a minute. So within this minute or so, if Thor isn't all in one piece, the spell's gonna wear off and he's gonna be dead. So this puts him in a tight spot, because the clock is ticking. And during this time, Thor finds himself in the void land of Vidblain. And I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced or if that word's ever been spoken on the internet. But I do know I just set myself up to get a comment from that one guy who's never typed on the internet ever, who's gonna come forth like, "You must respect the void lands of Vidblain," or whatever it is. So look out for that one. But Thor's been here before and he's escaped this place before as well. But while he's here, he hears a voice call out to him. And it's the voice of Donald Blake, who we saw a while back get chained up under Asgard in Thor Volume 6 at the end of his villain arc, when Thor spared his life and Loki chose his punishment, which was to make him the god of lies and have the serpent drip venom into his eyes. Then in Thor Volume 6 issue 28, the used symbiote of Meridius found its way down to Blake, and that's more or less where we saw him last. And even now he's still there, but he's able to appear now before Thor because of their connection. And with Donald Blake showing up now, this just makes me think of how I feel like he should have been the one to go up against Roxxon Thor in Immortal Thor issue 10, because the way Roxxon Thor's history is connected to Donald Blake, which we talked about at the time, I just think I would have preferred to have seen Blake have the opportunity to get some payback. And I know it's nothing more than a huge what if, and I mean it's almost as huge as the what if in this video sponsor, Marvel Strike Force, the intense squad-based RPG that's free to play with over 300 characters available. And to hop in, you can either scan my QR code or use the link in the description and download the app for free. And if you're new to the game, you can unlock up to 17 characters in the first 30 days, which is really helpful if you're limited on time and you're still trying to see some kind of progress, because this will get you more options way sooner, so you can build a team of your favorite Marvel characters. And for this month only, all players can use promo code DEC24 to unlock the Marvel Studios What If characters, which include Captain Carter, Star-Lord T'Challa, Doctor Strange Heartless, Kahori, and Zombie Iron Man. So it's season 3 of Marvel's What If being right around the corner. It's the perfect time to hop in and unlock these characters at no additional cost. So to make it easy, all you gotta do is use my link in the description or the QR code up top to download Marvel Strike Force and enter code DEC24 to get your free characters today. Thanks to Marvel Strike Force for sponsoring this video. But like I was saying about Donald Blake and his history with Roxxon Thor, they talk about some of it here, and mainly because the Enchantress used Blake by giving him what he wanted and making him a god, only so she could get what she wanted by cutting off Blake's head and using his body to create the Keep, who, like we saw before, the Keep went on to become Roxxon Thor. So yeah, if anybody would have had it out bad for that guy, it would have been Blake. And I'll even say, with how things played out, there could be more to see down the line between Blake and the Enchantress. But in the here and now, when Blake shows up, he goes through all of this history about what happened and what was taken from him, all the way up to where he's physically at now. And when he does, he even asks Thor, "Do you know where I am?" And Thor's just like, not here? And it's like, way to go, Thor, you hit the nail right on the head. If the head was the whole universe and every dimension known and unknown. But we also find out during this time that it's the combination of Thor's connection to Blake as well as Thor wandering in the void that allows Blake to speak to Thor while he's here. And so he goes on to remind Thor about what he said about Midgard's end, as he goes on to show Thor the Earth's future, without him there at the right place at the right time, to tilt the balance. And so when Thor sees this, he looks at Blake with a bit of doubt. So Blake brings up the things that have happened recently. from the wrath of Thor's mother to the return of the Utgard gods. And at one point he's even like, come on man, don't I have an honest face? Like, would this face lie to you? But all of this really comes down to just a couple things, because for one, Blake, he still wants revenge against Thor, but also there's this element of curiosity that Blake has as well, because since they're connected, Blake doesn't know what'll happen if Thor actually dies, because it's possible if Thor dies, Blake will also die, or maybe if Thor dies, it'll set Blake free, because for Donald Blake, those options could be two and the same. But nonetheless, for Blake, he wants to know what it would actually mean, no matter the cost. In the way he sees it, even if Thor were able to fight his way out of here, his body's been shattered to pieces, so to him it's almost as if Thor's fighting for nothing. And on the topic of Thor's shattered body, when we head back over to the party responsible, these guys are literally waiting here to see the spell wear off just so they can witness Thor's gruesome death. And I mean, in the case of Grey Gargoyle, for him, not so much, because he's freaking out, because killing Thor wasn't part of the plan, and really the plan was just to turn Thor to stone so they can get away, because that was supposed to give them an hour. But when the spell wouldn't stick, Grey Gargoyle, he couldn't let go, and Mr. Hyde saw an opportunity. But during this time, that's like a minute or so, and I know it's felt a little bit longer than that, but hey, it's comic book. The pieces of Thor's stone body start glowing with a green light, and they start coming back together. And so at first, the other guys, they're asking Radioactive Man if this is him, because all green lights look alike, but he's like, nah, and none of them know what's going on. They don't have the slightest clue of how this is happening, and when it does, it's just in time before the spell wears off. So it's not like Mr. Hyde can just punch him again and send Thor right back to the abyss. But what they do know when they see this happen is that Thor is pissed. And Thor just goes off on these guys. And Grey Gargoyle, who's scared again, he's not sure if Radioactive Man is still glowing or not. Because if he stops glowing, that explosion is going to cause a huge fallout. Which right there just kind of points out a flaw in their plan. And Thor calls them out on it, because right now they're in an area that has no civilians. So if Radioactive Man did detonate, there wouldn't be any casualties. But they basically set themselves up to fight Thor in the company of a walking, talking bomb. So Grey Gargoyle's like, we should go. Mr. Hyde's like, you're made of stone, you coward. And Cobra's just like, Thor ain't gonna do it, because this area would be uninhabitable for centuries. So he's like, Thor's bluffing. Well, I think he's bluffing. But it leads to the point where Thor has to remind these guys that he's not some kind of vigilante with a moral code that doesn't allow him to kill. Because this guy's currently got Midgard murder charges pending. So right here, Thor goes on to tell them about his axe, Tormod, which cuts oak like butter, whose blade has already tasted mortal blood. So again, Cobra tells him he's bluffing. And Thor goes on to say, am I? I have fought Ragnarok's, little Cobra. I have been the death of gods. Do you think I will not stoop to your red slaughter? Do you? And it's right there where Cobra calls for the translocation beam, because they're done here. And as soon as they leave, it's at this point where we find out how Thor's stone body had suddenly come back together just in the nick of time. Because as it turns out, this was done by the Enchantress, because prior to this, she had already asked Thor to bring her son back. So not only did she need Thor to be alive to do it, but she also believed by saving him, this would help to convince him as well. So from here, they go back to Asgard to discuss it further. But before we get into that, first we head over to Dario Agger and his team, where as soon as they arrive, he's asking them how they think it went. And it's like, for Cobra and Mr. Hyde, they see it as a failure, and if anything, they just made Thor mad. While on the other hand, Radioactive Man, he points out that they accomplished what they set out to do, which was stop Thor from mending his reputation on Earth. But as a result of Cobra leaving behind some audio surveillance just before they left, he managed to find out that Thor got help from Enchantress. So Dario Agger tells them he's going to use that information to let people know that the Enchantress, who's also the current CEO of Roxxon, she's out here siding with Thor, so that way she can take the blame for everything when Iron Man goes public with the company's dark secrets. And on top of that, it doesn't help that Thor's already wanted for murder, so when people find out that the Enchantress is helping him, it's gonna make her look even worse. And Dario lets Hyde know that he doesn't have to worry about a rematch, because Thor's gonna come to them. And from here, when we head over to Asgard, in Uller's Hall, we find out that Thor's made up his mind to help the Enchantress. And to pull this off, he's had his brother Uller prepare the secret flame of Asgardian magic so the Enchantress can perform this spell, while Thor fuels her with his all-power, so she can pull it off. And like we saw before, Sif, she doesn't believe it's a good idea at all. And she doubles down on that belief just based on the fact that they have to use the secret flame to pull this off, with it being the fire of doom and a thing bound to fate. And just before they get started, there's also a moment here where Thor is more or less like, Okay, Amora, you sure this ain't a trick? Because much like the example of Donald Blake that we talked about earlier, usually when the Enchantress strikes a deal, there's something else she's getting out of it that she's not always upfront about. So just to be sure, Thor tells her that he wants to hear her say Eric's name, because Amora has more than one son that could use restoring. And the first that comes to mind for him is her and Namor's son, who's from a possible future. But all the Enchantress really tells Thor is that it's not him. And she gives Thor not only her word, but her blood oath. She swears by it. And with doing so, they go forward with the spell. But as it turns out, when they do the spell, it wasn't for Eric. And Thor doesn't even know until it's actually done. Because at the end, there was this huge bright light, and for a moment only Uller and Sif could see through that light clearly. And when things calm down and the smoke settles, they find out that the Enchantress used this spell to bring back Magni, who's also Thor's son, from an alternate future that Thor had undone by going back in time and merging his consciousness with his modern day self. But even still, Thor always thought Magni was like that one good thing out of a dark future who had kind of fell victim to that timeline being destroyed, and now he's here. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.